Hello everyone, this is Laszlo, and today I am trying to show you how to add a simple model to Space Engineers. I am not an expert in this, and I spend a lot of time trying to figure out how things are, because modding Space Engineers is far from easy. The game is very complex, and the developers made it very optimized in terms of models and textures, but that also made it quite hard to figure out on your own how to mod it, how to add models, how to add more complex things. I am not even sure about the complex things part. I am just, I was trying to add some custom decorations that I will use in my playthrough, and that's how I get to modding. It's interesting that you can make anything you want and you can add it to the game, but it's very hard to start. First time I tried was for the AI block for my playthrough, and I spent several days trying to figure out why the textures are not working. I went to the Keen Discord, I went to the SEUT Discord, I was talking to modders. I don't think they realized that I didn't know about the Keen developers tool to create the textures, so I created my textures manually, and the Space Engineers obviously was not able to read it properly. Just by pure luck, I found a few days ago another tutorial on Space Engineers, specifically about the texture packing tool that Keen developed and made available. And that's when I realized that with that tool I can make sure that my textures are properly displayed and on the right side, and how it's supposed to have been done. I was so happy for this that I decided that I will try to make a short guide for those who are stuck the same way as I have. By all means, this will not be a complete guide, so there will be a lot of stuff that I will glance over, but there will also be a lot of things that I will show in the video, so hopefully this will be helpful for somebody who is just starting out with Space Engineers modding and have a good idea about a new block that he needs to add to the game. This is actually quite complex in every step, but I try to make it fairly easy by talking you through how I made this one. It's not necessarily the best way to do things, but it actually worked for me. Hopefully it will work for others as well. There are plenty of other people who try to make tutorials on this one, so if this one is not working for you, you should definitely look for other ones as well on YouTube. Let me talk a little bit about what is this and what have I planned for the rest of the video. I try to create a simple PBR model. Well, simple is relative. If you don't know Blender or don't understand PBR models, don't know how PBR textures are made or what they are, it's very not easy. But if you have made a couple of models or you understand basic Blender terminology and used Substance Painter before, this should be something that you will be able to understand fairly easily, I think. There are other tutorials and prerequisites that I will link both here and under the video. Those will help you to set up the tools you need and the tools that I will use in this tutorial to create the model and to set it up to be used in Space Engineers. So a couple of those tools are freely available. Others, like Substance Painter, are not really freely available, but you can get a fairly good deal for it around Christmas on Steam. And if you can afford it, I can definitely suggest it because it's a great tool, and I have not really seen anything that would compare to it in terms of the specific things we are using it for. Obviously, if you know how to create those textures on your own, you not necessarily need to use Substance Painter. You can use any other tool. If you know how to create textures in Blender, you can even create it in there. It's just the tool that I use here, so if you have that or know how to use that, then good. If not, you can probably use something else as well, as long as the spirit of the things is still alive and you have all the texture maps that you need. The texture packer by Keen is provided freely on Steam if you install the mod SDK for Space Engineers. Regarding the exported folders, textures, and how to add things to Space Engineers, I think the best thing is the SEUT installation tutorial on the website. So I will not read it out loud. It's definitely considered to be a prerequisite of everything I will talk about after this. So it would be a good time to stop the video now, go to the first link under the description and read the SEUT installation tutorial. Even if you don't do it immediately, just to see what is involved in installing that add-on to Blender, how you need to set it up and so on. That is useful, and sort of you need to do this and understand that to make sure your environment is working to create models for Blender. So after you have installed Blender, installed Substance Painter, installed the Space Engineers mod SDK, added your add-on for Blender for Space Engineers, then after that you can proceed further with this tutorial. And some parts of it I will show you in a video, like modeling. I will probably just do a time lapse because that's anyway it took several hours. And if you don't know how to make models or don't have your model, this is not the tutorial to teach you that one. So this actually assumes some sort of a knowledge in 3D modeling, texture creation, and the tools that we will use. So buckle up. And if you don't have it yet, then I will have a section later on about the additional tutorials that you can read or do before you attempt to make your own models in Space Engineers. Unfortunately, it's far from being that easy that just plug and play your models and everything works. It's not. It's really not. Alright, so I assume that you know what Blender is. You can download the latest version from their website. The SEUT tutorial installation is sort of like the basis of everything else. It talks a little bit about how Space Engineer handles textures, how the packed textures work in Space Engineers. It also talks about the prerequisites for the add-on, like the Havoc tools and the Space Engineers modding SDK. It is written fairly well in terms of where to find it step by step. You need to go through that in order to have further use of this tutorial. So go there, go through that, install everything it tells you to, and make sure that you have everything you need. Substance Painter, I gave you a Steam link if you have not known that one yet, or if you already have it, then good. Keen tools, these are coming from the Mod SDK. The tutorial specifically a bit outdated, but I'm still linking it here for the use for the Keen texture packager, and you need to read this through in order to understand how that small tool works. It's preferred if you would have some sort of an image editing software. You will work with DDS texture files, and you need some special tools to read it and to save into it. I used Paint.net to convert PNG files to DDS in a specific format that Space Engineers requires, and I used my imaging tool, the image editor tool, to adjust brightness and create my alpha texture, for example. I give the link to these two softwares. ACDC is a paid program, but it has a trial, so if you just want to try it for this tutorial, feel free to. Otherwise, any other tool that you can adjust brightness of a picture in should be good enough. And yeah, obviously you will need Space Engineers, because that's where you will do the stuff. And you will just any version of it. You don't even need the additional DLCs if you don't have that. Any version that you have of Space Engineers will work as of writing this tutorial. Additional guidance and guides and tutorials. If you don't know how to make models in Blender, I can suggest you take a look at Grant Abbott's tutorials on YouTube. He made a lot of beginner friendly tutorials. You can start your 3D modeling journey by going through a couple of those and understanding how Blender works. I can also suggest Udemy, which is like a training website. It has a complete Blender course, and if you do that, you will probably know more than I am about Blender. Substance Painter, I learned it by checking YouTube tutorials and Udemy for more complex stuff. If you haven't already, take a look at 3D Axis tutorials on YouTube. He also has a stylized material for Substance Painter and more or less explains how you can create your own textures in Substance Painter. With that, you just need to pull over the material, set it up correctly, create masks and that sort of stuff to make sure your model is textured correctly. So that sort of stuff is sort of required, because without it you won't be able to make your own model. If you already have your model and all the texture maps, you can skip everything I talk about Blender and Substance Painter. That's perfectly okay. SEUT tutorial page, I will link it in the descriptions and everywhere I can, because that's roughly 70% of the requirements of what I have planned for this video. Keen tools, fairly easy. You just need to read through that link that I was giving in the previous slide or down in the description. And additional help can always be found on Keen Discord and SEUT Discord. So if you look for those and join them, there's a specific modding section on the Keen Discord, and they will be able to help you with any questions or if you're stuck at somewhere. I don't promise I will too, but if I can, I will. Sort of things are happen, but I obviously can't help everybody with every issue. I'm also just a beginner with this one. I'm happy that I managed to figure out this one thing. So, I might not be able to troubleshoot every problem that comes up throughout the tutorial if something would be different, but if you watch through this video, you will be able to more or less tell some of the things, and it should work similarly on your PC as well. Alright, so step-by-step stuff. I will glance through this one because I have additional video parts that I wanted to cut into here. I will make sure that this is more or less followed and I will cut in the next slide here when it's appropriate. The first one will be making your model in Blender, and make sure that you create a low poly version and a high poly version. We will use both in Substance Painter to create our baked maps and our final texture. If you don't know anything about any of this, then I probably would like to ask you to stop watching this tutorial, because that's pretty crucial. You need to be able to deal with 3D models and understand how to export 3D models. You need to be able to understand a little bit about textures and PBR. But if you have that, good, go ahead. Everything will be a-okay and super fine. So let me just cut the video here about the time lapse when I was making the model. I chose to make a cactus because whoever decided that Space Engineers modeling should be this complex with all the textures, all the maps and all the packed DTS files and specific add-ons and all the things that can go wrong can definitely deserve a cactus up in their buttocks. So in the spirit of that, I decided I make a cactus decoration model for Space Engineers. Alright, so see you back after the time lapse of me making the model. Alright, welcome back. So now that we have our model, I will take the Substance Painter and I will create my new project there, bake the texture details from the high poly model to the low poly model. This is pretty standard stuff if you have used Substance Painter before. That will create like a basic model for you, and you will need to add your materials in Substance Painter. I will use 3D Axis stylized material version 2.1. If you have that, that's good. If not, you can either make your own materials in Substance Painter or get something else. I use that one because it's fairly easy. You just need to pull it over the model, add the black mask, make sure that you select the parts where you want to apply the texture, and you just pull another one to texture another part of your model, and so on and so on. You finish creating your texture in no time with that. Once it is ready, you will need to make sure that you create an output template, which is creating the individual texture maps in a format and with suffix required by the Keen tool. So let me come back to you once this is done and we have all of our models. I mean textures, sorry. Alright, so you have the texture packing tool from the Space Engineers Mod SDK. And when you open it up, you see here that it says PBR. And this is the default method that you need to use in order to import a PBR texture correctly to Space Engineers. This is the area where it will show you the progress. And this will, if you click this edit button here, it will show you the output textures. Basically, this is what you will need, because in order to display your model in Space Engineers, it will need these 3 textures plus the alpha mask. I don't think alpha mask is mandatory, but you can get around it, because when you generate the model, the packed model for Space Engineers, it will ask for this one. And if you put something like a black mask here, your whole model will be invisible. So you need to put something like a plain white mask here. I will explain it when we get there, but the main point is the texture packer the texture packager, whatever it is, it will generate 4 files for you. And what will be on those 4 files is basically pictures of various aspects of the the PBR texture. The NG stands for normal and gross. The normal will be the normal map of your texture. The RGB means that it will occupy 3 channels in the texture. If you have a texture that can have multiple channels, red, green and blue channel, and an alpha channel on top of that. So when you create this NG texture, to the RGB channel it will put the normal, because it will have color information as well, so it will need all the channels of this RGB. And the glossness will be put to the alpha channel. You don't need to change any of these settings here. I don't even know what these are for. But the point is, you need to make sure that you have a texture which has a suffix of normal, gloss, albedo, metal, and all that you want to use. You don't necessarily need to use all of them, but whatever you will use will need to be named accordingly. I will show it to you in a second. So you need to have one for the normal map, one for the glossiness, which is basically telling about where your model will be shiny and where it will be dull. Albedo, I think this is standing for the base color of the model. So if you will find it in a model that has multiple textures, it might not even named albedo, but this will be the one that should be named as the base color. Metal is basically the metallic value of your model. Basically on our model where it will be made out of metal, this value will be whitish or grayish. I will show you all of these textures separately wherever we will have it. AO is standing for ambient occlusion. This will be basically the shadows within your model. So where 2 parts of your model will meet, it can generate a shadow there. And this will be basically the shadow map of your texture. Emissive, this is the one where your model will be having some emissive values. It means that it will like a little LED on it or a light. It will not provide much light value, I think, but still, if your model has lights on it like panel buttons and stuff like that, This is where you will need to make sure that you will have an emissive map as well. Dirt, I have no idea what is this. Is probably a dirt map, but I have not used that. For me, it is baked into the texture, so I don't really have a separate dirt map. Color mask, as far as I understand, this will be the mask where your model will be colorable. So if you would put something like the planter part of our cactus to be on this color mask with white, then the in-game painting would be able to affect that area. So basically, if you choose a texture and the color in-game and paint the model, that part which is affected by this color mask will be paintable. The rest will not. I will not use this one in this model because this is just a simple model. I didn't want it to do anything extra. Alpha mask is basically where your model will be visible. It is useful when you are creating foliage like a bush or a tree or something like that. But for this model, it will be a plain white square because we don't want any part of this to be transparent. If I would have done the flower parts of the cactus differently, like if it would have been one plane and I would have baked these details onto it, then we might need to use an alpha mask to make sure that only the parts where you want it to be visible would be shown. So basically these are the output maps. This will be generated by this program, and in order to do that you will need to pull in all those textures and all the output all the input files that you will generate in Substance Painter. You need to give it a location. This is where it will put the output of all this. The textures will be a packed texture with the format of DDS. DDS is basically like a picture file with some specific algorithms in its generation. So basically it is optimized for space engineers, and it's a very optimized format of storing a picture. It has multiple channels. Each channel has each channel has their specific thing in it, and it will generate 3 or 4 of these textures and optimize it with an algorithm as much as it can. So the end result is a picture file that you will not be able to read with anything else. I mean, you can read it, but you need a special program for it, like Paint++ or Paint.net. Sorry, Paint.net can read it, and there are some other tools that you can read in DDS pictures, DDS texture files. And Space Engineers is reading it as well, so that's how it will store the information of the textures. So when you have this, so I'm just switching it back to Substance Painter now. You need to create an export template, basically an output template, and this is how you can create all the files that are needed here. Let me show you how you do that. So you have this export textures window open. You click on this plus to create a new preset, and then you need to add the maps that you need to generate. So if we go through this one, hold on, PBR output textures NG. Let's start with this one, the NG. So you need a normal map, and it needs to be an RGB because it will store 3 channels. So you just click on this RGB. This will add an RGB output, and here is where you see what will go into it. What we need here is normal. So you come here, click on this normal, pull it right here, and select RGB channels. This will tell Substance Painter that you need the normal information into here as a color information RGB, so all 3 channels. And you need to give it a name. This will be the name of the file that will be generated. It doesn't really matter in terms of the front part. I just say it, Space Engineers hold on, mod, and the name of this should be what you saw here. I mean, the suffix, what goes at the end of it, is normal with small letters. So you come here, you say normal, and that's your one texture done. The next one you need to do is glossiness. It's a bit of a gymnastics. The glossiness is here, but unless your shader map in Substance Painter is having glossiness in it, you will not get this one. But I will show you how to get around this one. So what this needs is a grayscale texture. So you need this one like grayscale. And what you need to pull here is roughness. You go here to roughness and you select gray channel. And this is good. And you can name it the same way, SE mod, and the name suffix should be gloss. Oh, bit small letter. Because basically how I managed to solve this is that if you don't have the glossiness map but you have roughness, you can invert roughness and you get a glossiness map. It's a bit weird workaround, but it will make all sense as I'm doing it, as I'm preparing the model for generation and all that. So the next one we need to make is, let's just close this one and open this one, CM. The next one will be albedo, which is, as I mentioned earlier, will be the base color, and it should be an RGB texture. So I add RGB, I name it SE mod albedo. This is what you need to name it for, and what goes in is the base color RGB channels. And you need to go through all of this. That metal is just a grayscale value. You find the metallic, pull it in, gray, name it SE mod metal. So it will generate all these files wherever it's applicable. If you don't have that specific map because your shader in Substance Painter is not having it, it will just keep that, so don't worry about it. Better to have this preset have and not generating all the textures if your model don't have it, rather than needing it and don't have it in the template, if it makes sense. Let me go to the next one, add, and this will be AO grayscale. So I go to grayscale, I go to find ambient occlusion. I think this one will do, and it needs to be a grayscale value, so that's cool. I'll do SE mod AO. I already see I mistyped the name here, so AO, that's good. Next one is emissive, which will be a grayscale value, emissive gray channel. SE. You can name this as your model as well. The main point is that the suffix, whatever is at the end, should be like that. I mean, this underscore and the name that the texture packing program needs. Emissive, yeah, that's right. And what goes here is emissive grayscale. Alright, so the next one is dirt. I just keep it because I don't really need it. I never actually needed it, and I'm not sure how will that affect the map. And I'm not particularly sure what goes in that either. It's not a problem, it will just not generate that texture. Color mask, I will do the same. I will skip it because I will not make a model that can be colorable in Space Engineers just yet. This is just something very easy. Alpha mask is you can find a map which is like fully black or white. It doesn't really matter. I will just generate it from one of these because I have a picture editing program, and I can choose any of these textures and just pull out the brightness to the maximum. That will make everything white, and I save that picture as the alpha mask. The main thing is that I need to name it as alpha mask. Alright, so once you have this one, you can go to here to settings, and you need to select from the second part output template. You need to choose whatever you named your template as. I named it as new Space Engineer separate, and you need to find the location for where you want to save it. It doesn't really matter where at this point. Let me just navigate to somewhere where I have some authority to create a folder. Yeah, this will do. I select this folder, and this is where it will output the files. If you choose format, you need to choose something like PNG or TIFF, if this can, here it is TIFF. I just choose PNG for now, and the size, whatever size you want it to, I just choose 2K for now. And if you click on export, it will generate all the files with the name you needed, with the suffix that the program needs. Let me show you how these files look at. Hold on. Alright, so here we are, and these are the texture files individually. This one, SE mode albedo, this contains, this contains the color information on your model. AO contains the shadows. If you look at it closely, you see it might look a bit weird here, but just because when you generate the texture, it leaves some space between where the actual information is. Don't get alarmed by this, it doesn't matter. Next one is glossiness. So wherever it will have some value, like here it will be this is what I mentioned earlier. So glossiness, it is named as glossiness, but this is basically a roughness map. I use this one to invert it, but you can use whatever picture editing software you are comfortable with. Let me just change this one to edit mode. I use ACDC, and you can here, if you use this one, you can go to special effect, and here's one called negative. This will basically invert everything on the picture. Wherever it will be blackish, those parts will be not shiny, and wherever it will be white, this is the parts of where the planter is stored, so this will be a bit shinier. And I have this one, I just save it, and this will truly be our glossiness map. And metal, this is a bit easier. This is, hold on, it opens in my other screen. So this is telling the program that wherever it's white, it will be a metal thingy, and wherever it is black, it will be not metal. This is easy. Normal map, I think it is pulled the wrong normal map here because it's supposed to have some normal information. Normal map can be two things, OpenGL and DirectX, and I think only one of them is doing the right job. Let me get back to texture exporting, and I go to was it New Space Engineers Grayscale, and our normal map here, it says normal, but I think what we need is normal OpenGL, because this will convert our normal map to whatever we need to. Pull it here, RGB. Alright, so that's good. And let me get here again and overwrite everything with the new one. If I get back here, now you see that our normal texture has normal information in it. Normal information means that sort of like height information. This will give the effect of things are being above the level of the surface or below it. Sort of like fake illusion of depth, if it makes sense. But with that one, I think I managed to overwrite my glossiness texture as well. So let me quickly do the magic again with this one. Special effect, negative, save. Alright, so this is it. These are the 4 maps it was generated. It was not generating, let me get back to texture, templates, new space engineers, and if I come back here, you see that it was not, it generated albedo, which is this one, the base color. It generated AO, which is this one, metallic and glossiness, and normal. Wait a second. So normal, glossiness, albedo, metal, AO, and it has not generated an emissive texture because we don't have an emissive data on our model. It's a whole lot of topics to learn how to create emissive textures in Substance Painter, and it is not in the scope of this tutorial. But the point is, now we have all the files we need and they are named correctly. Let me create a folder here and just name it packed. This is where we will store all our data, and I will copy the location of this as well. And if I go back to the texture tool and I close this one because I don't really need it, I go to output. So this will be where it will put the textures, and these are the textures I need them to pack into their specific location. What that specific location is basically shown in the Space Engineers tutorial, which is talking about where textures go. This is how it will be packed. It will create an add texture with ambient occlusion and all the others, alpha mask with whatever NG and CM. So this is what we went through earlier. But this program is made by Keen, so they will be able to create something hopefully that is resizing and naming and packing everything in a format that needs to be in. So what you need to do is you select all the files and you pull it anywhere on this texture packing tool. And when you do that, it will take a second and it starts running stuff. It found the file with the correct name. If it's not named albedo, then it will give you an error that it can't find the file. Otherwise, it will just start going through this and generate the DDS packed textures on its own. The last one will fail for us because I don't have an alpha mask here, but that's not a problem at all. And I will show you why. So we have these three textures and they look extremely weird. If you look at them in a program that can open DDS, for some reason it is looking this ghosty, strange one, because it is now showing you two textures in one basically. It looks weird, but don't worry, it will look weird for a while. The main point is it will look good in Space Engineers. It will not even look good in Blender, because at least when I tried it, if you hook it up to the mod that is generating the packed model, the whole model that you will need to make your mod out of, then it will not display these textures correctly in Blender. It's a headache, but trust me, at the end it will look good. This is how it's supposed to be generated. This is the tool you need to use to generate the textures for your model. And if it's hooked up well, then your packed model will have all the references that you need to know where these textures are, what channel goes where, and stuff like that. So let me go to the alpha mask. We currently don't have it. It's supposed to be a full white texture because we don't have anything that would need alpha. And how I will do that is that I pick any of the textures, it doesn't matter, since I was already working with this glossiness, I just use this one. And I edit it. And I crank up the exposure a few times to make sure that everything is white. And I do fill light as well. And I apply it. And I do this until all the information is disappeared from this texture and it's no longer visible. I do it one more time just to be sure. And I fill it with light. Now everything should be white here. And you do this, and you make sure you're not overwriting your previous one. You select save as, and you save it as SE mode, and the name should be alpha mask with small letters, I think. But let me just check the tool what it expects. It expects alpha mask like this. And if your prefix is that, then it should be good. I save as that one. And now we have a full white mask here. Actually, I should have done this before generating, but it doesn't matter. If you select all files now and you pull it over to the texture generator, it will give you another row here. It's okay. And if you start working on your textures again, if you find the first one, the first three should be finished because we did that before. But now that we have an alpha mask, that one will finish as well. And it will bake the plain white mask into the packed texture to where it belongs. And now you see all four items are green, so that's what we wanted. And if you go to the folder you went, the folder you selected as output, now you see you have 4 files here, and the newly added alpha mask is just a plain white texture. It will not display correctly, but the point is that this is what you need. These 4 textures are essential for the next step. When you go into Blender and create your model specifically for Space Engineers. So let me open up Blender and we will take a look at how to generate your model there. Alright, here it is. You select an empty scene. If you don't have this one, then make one. In the first section we discussed what you need in Blender. You need the if you go to the preferences and take a look at your add-ons, there should be Space Engineers Utilities, and you should have all your directories set up correctly. Your game directory, your assets directory, your Havoc directory, everything should be set up as we did in the first part of the video. And when you have that, it creates a new menu here on the side called SEUT. And if all is good, then you can just click on initialize SEUT. And this will set up all the scenes and all the stuff that you need. First important step is that you need to change this scene to something like your whatever you want to name your mode as. I just name it as Cactus, and if you click on that, it will rename everything in the structure for that, so that's good. Now you need to import FBX, and to click on this one, and you need to find your model. For me it was Cactus, and you need to import the low poly version. I think, yeah, here it is. So now you need to move this here. It doesn't really matter where it is, but you know, it should be somewhere centered. So yeah, here it should be fine. It doesn't matter, right? But I think it looks better if it's just centered. And this is what we need. The first things you need to make sure here is that you want to have a large grid or small grid. If you have a large grid, then you can just switch on the bounding box. This is the bounding box that your model basically needs to fit into, more or less. It doesn't matter if it goes up way, I think, so let me just move this one down. It goes a bit above what we need, but that's fine. I just need to remove the mounting point from the top, so it can only be mounted on the bottom and on the four sides. Technically I could make this bigger and just make sure that it can only mount it on the bottom, but it doesn't matter. For the purpose of demonstration purposes, I'll show you the normal version, and you can do whatever you want with your own model. Alright, so now that you more or less positioned your model within the bounding box, then you can have mount point mode on. And this is basically, these are the planes where your model can be mounted on. So if you have a wall, you can put it on top, on the side, you put it on the ground, and so on. I will delete the top one because I don't want it to be mounted on the side where it is actually going through this a little bit. But all the other sides should be good. If you look at in material preview mode, it will show you it in fantastic green. So these are the sides where your model can be built on, I think. Now this is the first time for me actually, right when I'm doing the tutorial, when I delete this one. I usually made my models with all six mounting points. I just fit them inside the cube. But this should be how you do it when you have something which doesn't fit to a cube. That should be fine as well. Now you can switch that on, off. And you have something here called icon render mode. If you switch this on, you need to save the file first, that's fine. Did it have any? Let me save it here as Cactus SE. And now I should have icon render mode on. If you click here and you toggle the camera, this will be the icon of your model in game. So if you search for it in the G menu, this is how you will, this will be the picture that will pop up. What I do here is that I go to view, I go to camera to view, and I will zoom in a little bit and make sure our model is having its good side. And yeah, like this should be okay. And if you go back to the SEUT, then you can just click on render, and this will generate you that ugly blue icon that Space Engineers is using for your model. If you go here, down here in the options for the render, you see here color overlay. If you untick this one and do another render, it will make it a colorful icon. So if you want a colorful icon, but right now it is white because we don't added the textures yet, and even if we would have added it, it will look weird. But anyway, if you go here and save this, you can save it. It doesn't really matter. Let me just save it. I just save it as cactus icon, and I save it. We will have a white icon for it. If you want to do fancy, you can hook up your textures, the individual textures to it until it looks good, and when you have a colorful model, you can come to the same place and render a colorful icon for it. I leave that for another day. I'm okay with the white icon for now. It's basically just a small picture with a size of I think 128 pixels per 128 pixels or something like that, and we need to do some change with that one. If you go back to your, not here, but hold on. Alright, so here we are, and here is our icon. The problem with this is that it's in PNG, so you need to do some magic here to convert this to a DDS file. First off, you will need to have paint.net installed, and if you have that, you can just open it with paint.net. You don't need to do anything with it. You see it has transparent background, that's fine. It has our icon, that's fine also. You just need to come here, save as, and you need to save it to the same directory, doesn't matter, and you need to choose direct draw surface, DDS. The name is fine. I click on save, and then it will give me a dialog box about the DDS settings. What you need to choose is this one. You need to go to this menu and select BC7 sRGB DirectX 11+. And you don't need to change anything else about it, just save it as OK, and that's fine. And now you have your DDS file. This will be the icon for your model in game. You can actually move this along with the other packed textures as well, and these will be all your textures in game. One more thing we need to do, instead of packed, I need to rename this to textures. It is needed because when you generate the packed model for Space Engineers, then it will basically add references to this in a folder called textures. And if it's not in textures folder, the SEUT add-on in Blender will stop with an error. So it needs to be in textures folder. Alright, so we have our icon. I can switch off the rendering mode, that's fine. And I already have some bad notifications, so it doesn't really matter at this point. Blend file must be saved. Yeah, that's okay. What we need to do now is we need to hook up our textures in Blender for the file. So you need to go to shading. This model currently doesn't have any textures, and that's perfectly fine. We are just here to do it, but you don't do it with that new. You need to open the side menu, go to SEUT, and generate an SEUT material. This is basically a whole lot of spaghetti, and if you see here, you see that our model is currently invisible because there's an alpha texture hooked up to it, which is by default all black for this material. So this is why we created that white material if you don't have an alpha texture model. So anyway, CM. You need to open this one, find our folder where we have the textures, and we need to go specifically to the ones which says textures folder, and we need to add the DDS files here. We need to find SEMod CM. This is the one. You don't need to modify anything about it. This is good as it is. It is hooking up the RGB to CM color, to metallic, to CM alpha, and that's it. You need to open for the add as well. So you need to add the add texture as well. And you need to add the NG to NG. And you need to add the plain white texture as an alpha. And alpha mask DDS as alpha mask. And for me, it looks weird as heck. You see that it looks full metallic and pink. I think it's because some of the channels are missing from this. So even though we have the DDS, we don't have anything in the add section of our combined texture map, because we don't have emissive, we don't have dirt map, stuff like that. If you add plain black textures into those, like you create a black square, name it as emissive, name it as dirt, and so on, and you create your pack texture with that, you will probably not get this pink one. But I'm not bothered by this one because in Space Engineers itself, it will look good. The main thing is we need to be able to generate the packed model with all the textures referenced in the texture folder and in the right location. So let me go back to layers now that all of our textures are hooked up. And even though this looks like shit, don't worry. This is good. This is working. If you have all the textures, it will look okay in Blender too, but it's not the point. It doesn't matter. Space Engineers will handle it eventually, so you will have the model that you need. And now you have everything, I think. You just need to make sure that you can export. So in order to export, you need to create a mod directory and within it a model directory. So let me get back here. This will be my model directory. I just create a new folder called models, and our textures will be in the texture folder. We actually don't need all these out here, so let me just create a folder for those as well too. Input textures, and I save everything. Actually, I can hold on. Yeah, I can. Sorry, I was thinking about whether or not I need these textures here in this location, but I don't. So now we need to copy that location. This will be our mod directory, and it automatically recognizes the models folder in it, and it should create whatever you need within these folders. So now comes the moment of truth. If you click on export, it will try to create the packed model for with everything, with references, with the textures and everything. If everything goes okay, you can see these SEUT materials here. I mean, not materials, the notifications. And you see that it started creating the XML library, but it was keeping it for some reason. I have no idea why. CM texture of local, hold on. CM texture of local material, SEUT material is not of valid resolution. I think this is not a, it is just a warning, probably because it is not expecting a 2K texture. I think Space Engineer stuff is usually significantly less than that, but I'm not worried about this. This is not a model that we plan to use 10,000 times, so it doesn't matter if we have a 2K texture for it. Actually, we could get away with a 1K texture or even less, but it's just a warning. It's not a problem at this point. You see that it has been created files, it has been created XML files, and one scene successfully exported with no critical red errors. This is what we needed. Perfect. Now if we go back here, ignore this one, you see it has three folders here. The textures one, this contains all the textures in the DDS format as we need. The models, it contains the MWM file. This is basically our packed model. And the data, this contains this SBC file. This SBC file is, let me open it with Notepad, that should be fine. This contains the basic information about your model for the G menu, basically. It will tell you its name, so we can name this cactus, subtype ID cactus, that should be good. Display name, this is how it will show up in the G menu, so I just name it as cactus again. Description, this is the item description. When you are trying to build it, it will be shown next to it. This is a cactus. Decoration. The next one, icon, this is basically telling the space engineers what icon to use. The default is astronaut backpack DDS, but what we need is, let me get back here to textures. We need this cactus icon.dds, and it is straight up in the textures directory. So we delete this GUI icons backpack and we just replace it with our cactus icon.dds. Grid size large, that's fine. Everything else here is fine. The model name is fine. Components, this will tell the G menu what you need in order to build it. Since this is just the a simple decoration, I just leave it as 10 steel plates, it doesn't matter at all. And I think this should be it. I save this, and now we are more or less ready to move this into the folder of Space Engineers as a mod. Let me give it a try. So basically, I create a folder here and let me say cactus SE mod, and I put the data, the models and the textures folder into here, so it will have nothing else, just whatever we need, and our mod will be named cactus SE mod. So I need to say to go here, and I just press Ctrl C on it, and what we need to open now is, hold on, So let me just come here, and you need to have a command prompt. You can do this from like pressing the start button, start menu on your Windows and start typing, and you need to type app data slash space and engineers. This is basically the app data roaming of your own installation, and this is where you need to place your local mods as well. Here you see this mods folder. If you go in here, I already have here two for my Space Engineers playthrough, but let me just press Ctrl V here, and it have inserted our cactus mod here. So this is what we wanted, that's perfectly good. Let me start Space Engineers and show you how you can add this to your save game. Alright, so I'm back in Space Engineers, and I already have a save, so I will just use that one. I go to load. I select the save that I wanted to add the mods to. There are some prerequisites of adding mods, like settings in Space Engineer. I think you need to be in experimental mode, but whenever you are trying to enable mods, you will see it immediately, so don't worry, it's not something that you can miss. You edit your save game, you go to mods, and it will start loading all the mods that are available. I have a ton, so don't judge. And you see here the folder we added, it Cactus SE mod, and it shows a little house in front of it. It means that it's a local mod, so it is not something from the workshop. Eventually you can publish it there if everything is working and it works as you want it to. Let me just add this to my gameplay. I already have two other mods here, the two other folders that you have seen in my Space Engineer mod directory. One of them is the Oracle AI that I made, and this one is something like a surprise, so I'm not trying to shoot that one yet. It will be coming in my Space Engineers playthrough. Once you added your local mod, then you can go here, press OK. If you're refreshing itself, and it is trying to load everything in. Let me come back to you when it is loaded, and we can take a look at our model in game to see if it was working indeed as we expected it to. Oh no! I see that our cactus mod is giving critical error, and let us check what's the error is. It says mod partially skipped, loaded only 4 out of 6 phases. Following error occurred. The value cannot be null. Parameter name key ms core lib. So something in our SBC file is not correct. The problem is I don't know what parameter, probably the key parameter, right? Let me go back there and check if we can identify it. Alright, so this is our mod, and this is the SBC file. Let me open it, and we can take a look at it if we can identify if there's a key in it somewhere. I don't actually see any key. So I have no idea what it was talking about. Hold on. This is good that I'm making a tutorial, and even I don't know how to make stuff. Alright, so I know that one is working and it doesn't have anything extra. Let me take a look at the SBC file for this one, and we can take a look at the SBC file for the other one too. Let me just go back here, mods, cactus, data, cube. Alright, so that is for my other mod that is working, and this one is the new one. So I look at it, it looks cube blocks, definition, ID, but I think it was ID cube block. Maybe I shouldn't have messed with this one. ID, but it cactus, that should be fine. Name, cactus, icon, cube size, large, that's good. We have not checked these, but it's identical as far as I can tell. Model, steel plates, mount points. Oh, it is missing one mount point, I guess. Let me reload, and if it is not solving our critical error, then it might have been the mount point that is having an issue, although I'm not 100% sure on that one. Block pair, name, definition. But technically, this should be roughly the same. Let me go back to Space Engineers for a sec. Here we are. And just... Alright, so we have our cactus model here, despite the error. I can pull it on my menu, and then it is crashing Space Engineers. Alright, so this is not the way to do it. Let me restart Space Engineers. Actually curious that I just need to reload the mod with the modification, or there's something else that is missing. Alright, so now I loaded back successfully. We still have our model. Let me see if I can build it now. It looks a bit weird though. But that's fine. It's a large block, and you can place it to other large blocks as well. Let me put down a block here. And now if I press 8, I can place it. Indeed, it costs 10 steel plates, and you see our description is there. This is a cactus decoration. And you see all the PBR textures in it. The metal is shiny. And you see the flowers in it. It still has a cubical collision box, so you know you can't walk through it, but it is larger than the average one cube, so you probably won't be able to place it in a place that only has one cube. If you look at this, you can mount it on the side of any other cube, but if you're trying to put it on top of it, it will go as red because it doesn't have a mounting point there. I guess you might be able to get around it by building there, and then you can mount it, but it's then, you know, inside another block. It doesn't matter. This was meant to be working as it is. And I'll show you the issue, what the issue was. So if I go here to the cactus mode data cube blocks SBC, I had changed here this type ID. That needs to be cube block and not changed. You can change the name, the display name, you can change the description, you can change the icon location, and you can rename the model, but then you need to change it here as well. The point is that this one is telling where the model is, where the textures are, where are the mount points, and so on. And if it is not corresponding to this directory, then it will not find stuff. So, you know, the textures need to be in texture folder. This is how you generated the model. And that's it basically. Now you have a mod in its own directory. You can publish this to the workshop, and if you publish a model, it will add 2 additional files here. I have not figured out yet how to add the thumbnail icon for your mod. Probably it's very easy, but I have not found any good one. Woobity woobity woop. Hello everyone, this is Editor Me from the future. I just wanted to give a heads up on that issue. Actually, figured it out through a Steam post yesterday that if you add a picture of your mod or whatever you want as a thumbnail into the directory of the mod and you name it thumb.png, then when you upload your mod to the Steam workshop and to mod.io, it will be using that picture as the default thumbnail for your mod. So, you know, otherwise there's no way to change it in the Steam interface, which is like very pre-iPhone, but you know, Steam has these kinks sometimes. So just to get around it, put that picture there in the mod directory, name it as you need to, and it should recognize it and it would put the picture as a thumbnail. One additional note on that though is that the picture that you choose as a thumbnail should be less than 1 megabyte in size. If it's bigger than that, then Steam will actually fail and you will not get any meaningful error message. It will just not upload your mod. You will get an empty item in your workshop with nothing in it, and an error message in Space Engineers that the upload was failed. So besides the naming, you need to make sure that the size is not exceeding 1 megabyte. Otherwise, it will fail. Alright, so back to me in the past. But yeah, other than that, you can enjoy your model in Space Engineers. And as long as you can create anything in Blender and follow these steps, you should be able to add it as a normal decoration block. You can eventually venture into other stuff like, you know, transparent models, which should also be fairly easy to do, and models with animation like the wind turbine, if there would be any. So, but those are topics for another day. I just wanted to show you this one because I'm quite happy with how this turned out. I'm quite happy that you can create any model with a PBR texture, and there's a way, even though it's a rocky road, there's a way to add it to Space Engineers, and it works. You can build it, you can grind it down, and you can rebuild it again if you want to. You can build as many as you want. It has mounting points, so you know, you can have your own garden of cactus if you want to. It's good. And it's not exact because, you know, it actually looks good only when you put it on something, so like this. But that's just about adjusting the mount point, adjusting the model to fit more into the bounding box in Blender, and that sort of stuff. You need to experiment a bit with your own model and figure out how to add it for you know, if it has any specific parts. I might later do a follow-up video if I ever figure out how to create more specific models like glass and that sort of stuff, like emissions. I really wanted to figure out how emissions work and lights work. But yeah, for the moment, this will be it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you try this and working for you, then let me know down in the comments or send me a picture on Twitter of your creation that you managed to add to Space Engineers this way. There are probably some other stuff that you need to take care of or need to know in order to successfully add any model that you want to the game. But I think this is a good start. So if you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel as well. Have a nice day, everyone. Bye bye.